Okay, and I am really psyched today to have Todd and Tracy, who Todd wrote a memoir about being an Alzheimer's caregiver, and like I was just saying, I absolutely love featuring real life stories. There's checklists on how to do everything under the sun, but hearing a personal story is so authentic and we can all relate to it and reflect on it. And so, Todd and Tracy, so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
Thanks.
thanks, Steve. This is gonna be fun.
Yeah. Now, one of the main reasons there's method to the madness of scheduling this event because we have a big event coming up, and it's nationwide, and it's called the Walk to End Alzheimer's. And uh I've been around so long that I remember when it was called the Memory Walk, but nationwide, you can go to this page that I'm going to share with you, and you can type in your zip code, and you can search for walks. So if you're in Oregon, if you're in Nebraska, there is a walk near you. And uh, I highly encourage you to join one of these walks because you're funding a great cause, but you're connecting with community. And that, as I think we're going to learn today, is one of the most important things. But uh, Todd and Tracy, you all are very involved with several walks under the umbrella of Amy's Army. Tell us a little bit about that Amy's Army and how that came about.
I'll jump in, and Tracy can certainly add to this. It really started here in New York. A good friend of mine, whose mom had gone through an Alzheimer's journey, John Mark Antonio, suggested to me that I ought to bring my mom up and have her participate in the Walk to End Alzheimer's here in our area. And I didn't know how she was going to react to it. At that point, she was probably 6 years into her Alzheimer's journey. But she aggressively got involved, wanted to walk the longest of the two routes. She made sure she signed her flower before the walk, and she felt like she was doing something to put an end to this miserable disease. And that sort of inspired us. And Tracy can talk about Amy's Army, but that's how we got into the Walk to End Alzheimer's.
Wow. Yeah, Tracy. And Tracy, both you and I are on a committee that is involved with the Walk to End Alzheimer's in Reston, and all three of us are going to be at that event. So, folks, if you're in the Northern Virginia area and you're listening to this or you're in the audience, we would love to have you join us. It's a great day.
To add to that, so Todd did that walk with my mom the first time in New York in 2017, and he was like, "You really should do the walk in Reston." So 2018, we signed up. Him and his wife came down, and my mom and one of my really good friends and I went over, and I got to see this firsthand. She again wanted to get her name on this flower and be doing something, and I think that was kind of her operation all along. Like, we were in a drug trial for over a year, commuting from Centerville, Virginia to Georgetown a couple of times a month, for her to spend 8 hours there going through tests every single day. And it was clear after like month 2 that she was getting the placebo. And I said, hey, we don't need to do this anymore. We can just quit. And she was like, no, because this could help somebody someday.
Oh, wow.
She was a nurse for 48 years. She took care of patients at night and her 3 kids during the day. She moved in with me in 2002 and took care of my 3 kids. She was like a second mom to them. Um, it was kind of her legacy. So that's why I walk. I walk to continue her fight.
Man,
And
this
just
is
as a added, so after she passed, that's when Tracy invented all this purple camo. I swear we have everything in purple camo:
Holy cow.
shirts,
I
hats,
love it.
water bottles. It's amazing, all the stuff that Tracy has built. So we've created a brand essentially with Amy's Army. But in the last 2 years, I think we raised close to $50,000 for the various walks that we've been involved in. And it's a tribute to our mom, and we just want to do what we can to end this miserable disease. The reason I keep using that word is before that very first walk, I did a video with my mom in the Saratoga Spa State Park because she loved to walk. And I said, we're going to do a little promotional video. I'm going to play a little word association game with you. And I had practiced with her a couple times before we actually did it. And so I asked her, first word that comes into your mind when you hear Todd. And she said, son. And I said, Ribby. She said, dog, because that was her dog's name. And then I said, Alzheimer's. I had no idea what she might say. And the first word out of her mouth was miserable. And then with a little humor, she says in the video, I'd like to use another word, but I probably shouldn't do that since we're on video.
Well, she sounds amazing and inspiring, and and look at what has been created in her memory. But I say this is a great transition. I've added links to all the walks in Amy's Army. We hope you all participate in this, and I'll make sure to send a follow-up and have those on the recording link. But let's dive into the book, which is titled "I'm Not Ready for This." And Todd, tell us, it's challenging enough being a caregiver and going through this process. And I understand you're also president of a very large chamber of commerce up in New York. But what inspired you to write a book? And I'm dying to learn a little bit more about Amy. She sounds fascinating.
Yeah, so I'm going to be just totally honest with everybody. What inspired me was anger. I started writing in September of 2020. So think of where we were in September of 2020. And I don't know about other states. I had the experience here in New York where the protocols, every aspect of our lives was being controlled by the former governor. And over the summer in Saratoga County, which has a population of about 240,000 people, at each individual day in August, because I tracked that running the Chamber of Commerce to know what it was really safe to do and whether we had community spread or not. We had under 10 people every day that entire month that had contracted COVID. And yet the nursing home that my mom was in here in town, a mile from my house, a half mile from my office, we weren't able to see her. And it was because of the protocol, not even outside, couldn't even do an outside visit separated by 6 feet wearing a mask. That was not allowed under New York State's protocols. So the combination of my being upset with not being able to see my mom, Tracy couldn't travel here from Virginia. My sister Trisha couldn't travel here from Massachusetts because of travel bans and quarantine processes that they would have had to go through. And the other thing, in our business community was shut down too. Our 5 largest attractions for that summer were not allowed to open, even though some of them were outdoors. And so I was angry about what was happening to our business community. I was angry about what was happening to my family. And I had played a pretty significant role in our community in trying to advocate for change and to reopen. And so I had so many people that said, you should write a book, you should write a book. And so I decided to write a book to describe what happened to me and my family and me and my community.
Now, this is great. And I think so much reflection on the changes and what we went through with COVID. You hope that if we're ever in a similar situation, that there's a lot of lessons learned and we don't repeat some of the challenging mistakes. But let's kind of back up a little bit pre-COVID. okay? Because you had mentioned she was in a nursing home when COVID hit, and that was the genesis of the book. But walk me through the journey of, when did you discover that mom might have some memory impairment, and what that looks like. And I know we're going to have a lot of people listening to this that are going to be very curious about the transition of, she was living in a home and then she transitioned to a senior living setting. That always generates a lot of interest in hearing those stories.
Want me to take that one?
Yeah, I was going to say,
So mom is this, I just
yeah, Tracy.
active, independent, amazing person. And then when did you start seeing signs that there
So
could be
at
change?
68 years old, my mom was still working. She was working for a cardiovascular group here in Northern Virginia. And she even said herself, maybe a year later, that part of the reason she chose to retire was because she felt like she was forgetting things. And the last thing she wanted to do was forget an important detail about a patient and not relay that to a physician. So she retired in at 68. And I noticed that she would be coming in. So she lived with us. I'm actually in what was her bedroom. It is now my little office. She would walk around the corner and come into our living room and say, "What time are the games tomorrow?" Because my three kids all played sports. And so we'd say, "Well, the first one's at 8:30, then we got one at 11, then we got one at 3." And she would go back to her room and she'd come back in a few minutes later and she'd say, "Okay, what time are the games tomorrow?" And I would say, "You just asked this." And she would say, "I did." And I think it was her not remembering that she had asked, like it didn't even sound familiar to her that she had
Mhm.
walked in here 5 minutes ago. So we took her to a neurologist. They did the neuropsych testing. It came back that she was definitely declining and it was likely Alzheimer's. Because the neurologist we saw was kind of hooked into Georgetown and their research, she did have a PET scan. They did confirm it. And we were really early. Nowadays, really early, she might have been one of these people that could have been put on these new drugs that they have, if we could have found it. But she was so early, our doctor, the neurologist said, "If she didn't live with you, you probably wouldn't know this for another 5 years."
Mm.
And that was how early it was for her.
Now, I don't mean to interrupt you, but one of the challenges that a lot of caregivers face is concern about mom or dad or a loved one, and offering for them to come and live with us, and they refuse to. It, was she open-minded to that idea, or was there any resistance there?
So she was already living here. And as a nurse, she knew, I tell people this all the time, she knew what this meant. And we came home, we sat down, and she was crying and she said, "I don't want this for you."
Okay.
She knew it was too much to put on me. And
Mhm.
I said, "Well, geez, I'm not throwing you out of the house." So it was a team effort. I had three children that were really good at Grammy sitting. My husband is a physician, and I mean, we had resources, and I can't say how much that helped. But it got to a point where, I told her when she was no longer safe to be here for herself or for my family, leaving a pot of water on the stove, letting a service worker in to do something that was there 4 hours early and I wasn't home. I mean, there were
Mhm.
things that were just dangerous, but also my mental health was massively declining. And that's where my husband called Todd and said, "It's time."
Okay.
And
And how long would you say that process of caregiving from sort of the diagnosis to the to when your husband called Todd?
so she was diagnosed in 2013. He called Todd in 2019. But
Wow.
we probably saw like the diagnosis came, after we had been seeing stuff for a little bit. So
No, and like you said, I mean, one of the things that I've heard a lot of on one common theme is 3 to 5 years. Like when people have a diagnosis, they look back 3 to 5 years and they say, "Oh, I saw the warning signs." So man, okay. Well, Todd, you are now included in this script here. Um, what was that call like when you received it, and did you expect it? I mean, did you think that this was coming around the corner?
Yeah, we we had a deal from the very start that when that call was made, we'd figure it out, right? We knew it was coming. We just didn't know when. And, so Tracy and her family had to go through all the medical appointments, right? All the putting up signs all over the house, making sure there's a fun story. Tracy was worried about her getting lost because she'd like to go for walks with Ribby every day. And so Tracy was worried about her getting lost somewhere. So rather than put a GPS thing on her phone or whatever, she put it on the dog because she knew my mom would never go anywhere without Ribby, right? Tracy,
Wow.
they had to take away the car. So all those things, right, that you go through, she had to deal with. When she called me, my job was to work with her to figure out, okay, where's a safe place? And so we had an immediate opportunity. Her older sister, our aunt, Joni, had always said, she can come stay with me. I'm retired. I'm here. I can be with her 24/7. She lives alone, so it was a companion for her. And so that was our first that summer. We moved her up to Joni's house. I don't remember exactly what fib we gave her to get her to go
I
up
think
there. I
she was
think it
just
was
going to
for
visit.
visit, and then she just never left. We had to figure out. So her dog was certainly not going to go with her, right? So our sister Trisha, a brilliant thing, she got a stuffed animal dog that looked just like Ribby, and my mom carried that with her everywhere. At times, it was scary how real she thought that stuffed animal was. And so
Yeah.
then that fall of 2019, we started looking at care facilities because Joni lives out in the middle of the woods. There were some wandering issues, and we were worried with winter coming in Massachusetts. She wanders out of Joni's house and into the woods. We might never find her again. So, and I had an incident when she was staying with me in November of that year where normally I could talk to my mom and she'd calm down. I couldn't calm her down that day. Literally walked out my back door, walked out into the streets of Saratoga in a blizzard, and walked away from our house. Now, I was following her, but that was the trigger that, okay, we need more help. We need somebody to take care of her. And so we looked at facilities in Massachusetts, Virginia, and Saratoga Springs, and settled on Saratoga. This is another time where I will say, we have a little bit of privilege. My role here, the Wesley community, the heroes there. I know the CEO. I know the head of the foundation. I know the CFO. So I always felt like, all right, if we need something, I can make a phone call and get the support that we need, my mom needs. And so the other piece for me is my schedule is crazy, but I also do control it. So I could commit to visiting her every day. So that's how we chose Wesley.
Okay, great. And one a couple of little things, and I've got some more questions. But the and I'm dropping the Wesley Community website into the link for anybody who is interested. Um, but okay, so up to this point, um, it sounds like you had a few challenging, more than progressively, a few more than challenging things. But did you? And it sounds like wandering was an issue, which impacts her safety. But did you discover, aside from when she got angry there, did you have sort of aggressive behavior or anything like that that you were dealing with?
I mean, Tracy certainly did. The other thing that we all eventually, saw is the sundowning every day. And in her case, she wanted to find the children. So that was, so it didn't matter where she was, Tracy's house, my house, Joni's house, every single day. At the sometime between 3 and 5 o'clock, she would want to know where the children were. And if they weren't there, as was the case in Joni's house or my house, it was almost impossible to manage her without her getting angry and frustrated with that situation. Tracy obviously dealt with it way more than
And
I did.
and Amy, your mom had 3 children, correct? Like
Yes.
the three of you. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So some of the I was just recently at at an event that Tam Cummings was speaking about, and she was talking about how there was a parent that was living with a family, and it was, even though she was living with her daughter and her children, she the those children represented her children. That's the mindset that she was in. And I, before we kind of transition to making the move to the community, any words of wisdom to people that may be going through something similar? Like, are any sort of tips that you learned in taking care of your loved one in your home environment?
I learned a lot, and I will say the Alzheimer's Association was, I know, really vital in giving some of these things to Todd to learn. I kind of learned on the fly, but the biggest thing was to keep her at ease, and not say, well, there aren't any kids or there never were any kids. My son at 16 years old, she went up to his room. He was Grammy sitting and said, "Where's the little girl?" And he looked at her and he said, "I don't know, but I'll help you look for her." And that was probably, I don't even know how he knew to do that, but he went through the whole house. They looked everywhere in the house. And then he said, "Well, let's go back to your room and read all the whiteboards that are there." So they come back. By the time they're back here looking at whiteboards, she's forgotten she was looking for a little girl,
Oh,
and NCIS is on and she's ready to watch TV. So distraction, going along with it, owning everything. If it's always your fault, like, just get over it
yeah.
now and say, "Yep, I left that there. I'm so sorry." Or, "Yes, I moved that on you. I'm so sorry." Todd had a much better way of dealing with all of this too. He used humor, and that worked amazingly well with her.
Uh,
Yeah, that are chocolate chip cookies. Her dog, it was all about distraction. It was all about trying to get her to smile, right? If you could get her to smile, that changed the whole conversation. So doing something silly and stupid, making it really, it's all about, you gotta, in my brain, it was, I'm just trying to get her to smile, right? Just, if I can get to a smile from wherever we're at right now, whatever it takes to make that happen, do that, and ignore ignore the questions, ignore the repetition, ignore the situation, and try to find something that distracts her in a positive way.
Yeah, I've been, one common theme is that you can't argue with somebody with dementia or Alzheimer's, and generally that's where you see aggressive behavior is that telling someone that they can't do something, or why are you doing that? And man, your son is just light years ahead of all of us to have the foresight to treat your mom the way that he did. What a wonderful gift. And the okay, and
And
Todd, I love the approach of humor too. Is that yeah, it's the opposite of aggressive behavior is humor. So it's anything that we can do to get somebody to
and
laugh.
just as patience. Oh my, just right. You just, however you have to do that, you might have to walk out into the backyard and scream after it's all over. or like me, go hit a golf ball or something or run. But wow, you just have to have that enormous. And Tracy mentioned it, the Alzheimer's Association. Very first thing I did when Tracy called with the diagnosis is my wife and I went to a workshop that they did on how to communicate with a loved one that has Alzheimer's. I used the tips and suggestions from every meeting forward until her very last day. They were super helpful, and one of them was, you just got to go along. As
Yeah.
often as the same question gets repeated, it is the first time they believe they've asked it. And
Yeah.
so if you can get to that point where you can treat it like it's the first time you heard it too, it gets a lot easier after that. But boy, that just requires a ton of patience.
So Todd, you brought up patience, and we have somebody that asks, where do you find the unlimited well of patience? I find I lose my temper, not immediately, but eventually. But I liked, for this person that's asking the question, a couple of things that Todd mentioned, hitting a golf ball, going running, going out in the backyard and screaming. What are some of the things that both of you used to just get through those frustrating times?
For me, I had a friend of mine that met me at the gym every morning at 9 o'clock. And I don't know that I would be here if I didn't have her. Um, Getting it out, talking about it, getting through it. But I had to live in my mom's world when I was with my mom. And so when I wasn't with my mom, I had to get back into my own world. And it required a lot of venting. It is not easy. I am not saying I didn't get into arguments with her. I mean, it's really hard when you're first starting that process of whose cup is that? I don't know whose cup it is. Like, you start that way. And then the next time there's a cup there, you're like, oh yeah, that's mine. I mean, you learn as you go. And I mean, the upside to the arguments is more than likely she didn't remember them. But I will say this, she would remember she was mad about something, but not what it was. So that emotion it's just trying to keep them away from that emotion, because that emotion doesn't go away even though they don't remember why they're mad. Um, and like I said, the humor and the distraction. I mean, we're going through this right now with two more family members, and I had the task of calling every day. The two of them are living together, and I was calling to tell them what their schedule was. And I literally was like, I'm taking a page out of Todd's book, and I called every morning and I said, "Hey, it's me. I'm calling with your schedule. I'm just doing my job. Don't get mad at me. This is what I was told I needed to do. And so here's and then I'd call a little bit later to say the next thing, and they had to get the dog out or whatever. And again, the humor, like, I'm just doing my job.
Yeah.
So as much as you can do that, or distract, or just go along with it.
And as you said that, Tracy, I was sort of like, and for the person that was asking the question, is finding the distraction. And Tracy, what a great one is a friend to work out every morning with. You're probably, even though you're in this tough situation, you're probably in the best shape of your life, and I think it's important. A glass of wine is important for many of us, to relax. But I had another person on a few years ago that talked about how this caregiving situation, she started drinking too much and realized after a year and a half that she had a problem. Is try to find something positive that is going to make you better while you're going through this, like working out or your golf swing or reading a book or what have you. But that's great. Now,
And don't be afraid to tell your physician what you're going through, because my physician was also really helpful to me. And I went on Wellbutrin for that period, and that probably helped me get through and take the edge off. And it wasn't required for the rest of my life. So There's no shame in that. Talk to your physician.
Yeah. Okay. Now we I love this question, and I love our audience because they always come up with great stuff. And Ravi says, how do you deal with the topic of having them give up their financial controls? It's so sensitive. Did you, like, looking back, she was living with you, Tracy, but how did you get power of attorney and all of that before she was diagnosed? And any tips you might give Ravi there?
So with the diagnosis, she also was still pretty with it and said, geez, I should get my paperwork done. And we went to an attorney and got all that done. I think honestly, on the finances side of it, it was introducing her kind of to online banking that I had passwords to, and it kind of just happened. I mean, we were sort of fortunate in that she didn't really fight us on that aspect of it because there were so few bills she was paying anyway.
Okay.
So, because she lived with me. So, it was kind of easy to get that from her. Now, the ATM card and her credit card, she mixed up. They were both Capital One, and she'd go to the ATM and stick her credit card in and not be able to get anything and come home and be all frustrated, or vice versa. So then I did end up going and getting her money every so often. So she would have cash because, there's something about older people still needing cash in their pockets. So I did do that for her to alleviate a stressor of going to the bank and putting the wrong card in. I labeled her cards. Her credit card was labeled, this is a credit card. Yeah. I mean, everything works until it doesn't work. So you do whatever until you got to think of something else, because why is this on here? And she peels it off. So.
And then Todd brought it up earlier, but the car keys, like, any sort of words of wisdom on that? Because that's a common challenge, just like the finances.
So she got lost at a Walmart and couldn't find her car and called me crying. And at that point, I had her on Life 360. I would highly recommend, if you have a person that you care for who carries a phone, an iPhone, or I'm assuming any phone, but iPhone, put 360 on it. They don't even need to know it's there. But I was able to track her. She was able to track me if she wanted to. Not that she could remember how to use the app, but I could see where she was. So I pull up my app and I said, okay, well, you're over here. I'll be there to pick you up in 5 minutes and we'll find your car. And she's like, no, that's not where I am. And I was like, okay, I'm looking at the map. I got where you are. I'm going to be there. She's like, but that's not where I am. And I said, okay, but I'm going to find you. So I'll be there in 10 minutes. And I just left. And so I get there. Not only did it show me where my mom was because she was holding her phone, but it showed me where she stopped driving. So I actually was able to find her car. After that, she was a little leery of driving. She had a lot of incidences like that one, but this one was really bad. And she had been lost for like 2 hours trying to find the car. So she says she's not going to drive anymore. And then I'm at the gym and I see Life 360. Amy has left the house. And I'm like, oh my God, where is she going? She's driving uptown. And then I see her turn around and go back home. So I get home and I said, where'd you go? She said, how do you know I went somewhere? And I said, because I got you on my phone. So she said, oh, I was going to go to Wegmans, but then I couldn't remember where it was. So I just came home. And it wasn't really me that got the car away. It was a neighbor. There's something about having a trusted friend say, Amy, I don't know, why do you even keep the car? They can drive you wherever you need to go. You could get some money for that car. And she comes home and tells me, Dottie thinks I should sell the car. Okay, let's go sell the car. And we're going to do it today because you're talking about it.
You know what? I'm really glad you brought that tip up, because it's something that I've heard on, and I was actually just talking to a family yesterday where the woman was like, Steve, could you come over? And like, her mom listens to these discussions, and she wanted, and I was like, I'm probably going to go over there and sit down. And she goes, she'll listen to anybody but me. And she already listens to you on the discussion. So So getting that outside voice is so important.
And it may be
Um,
someone in your family, and a lot of times it was Todd. Like if I told
yeah.
Todd, "Hey, can you tell mom that she has to do this?" He would tell her, and she was like, "Todd told me." Okay, great.
Okay.
I'm glad Todd's the
And I'll tell you what, folks, you know, the driving thing with dementia, it's one of my soapbox speeches lately because you think about it, it is, you could compare it to driving while texting, driving drunk. I mean, can you imagine if mom hit somebody or got in an accident, what that would do to her? And that's not what the legacy that any of us want to leave. And one of the things I try to tell people is none of us have a crystal ball. We could all have dementia. So think about, you know, being responsible, that if you find yourself at some point in life going through these transitions, there are a million ways to get around besides you getting behind an automobile and turning the steering wheel. And we've all got to be have an open mind to give that up. It's very hard when we live in suburban car dependent neighborhoods, though. Trust me. Okay. Wow, what a story. Okay, now we're getting back to Todd. And Todd, something that I wanted to share with everybody about your choice of the Wesley in Saratoga that I love that you shared was that you had a personal connection there, that you had something that made you a little bit different than the all the other residents in that community. And this is one of the reasons why we encourage people to work with aging life care managers. Like, you don't need to be the president. Well, many of us can't be the president of the Chamber of Commerce in a community where you might have a connection like that. But an aging life care manager helping you make this decision when you move mom in, you've got that clout, you know, that is that puts a little bit more attention on your mom, which is very important.
Well, and
Uh,
and the other thing that was a part of that is that I committed to visiting every day. And oh my God, I mean, I became friends with CNAs. So it wasn't just the folks at the highest levels of the Wesley, the folks that were on the floor. If I could, I spent a lot of time there over the course of the next couple of years, although not as much as I would have loved since we were separated for 363 days. But I knew, like, there was one CNA that was chatting with me one day about an event taking place at the city center. I got them tickets so that they could go to the event. So anytime I could do something to pay them back and thank them, I tried to. Even on the floor, as I'd be sitting there with my mom, I'd see something going on with another resident, and I'd call somebody to come and help out. So and if I could help in any way, I mean, I got to know some of the other residents too. When you're sitting down at a cafeteria table with my mom and some of her friends, they never knew my name, but they recognized me as Amy's son. And so I had, a relationship there too. And I could grab them a cup of coffee if that's what they were asking for, so that the CNA didn't have to come over and do that. So that makes a huge difference, I think. Not that
Man,
you got to do that every day, but
no,
regular
but
attendance. The world is run by those who show up, is what I say all the time.
I love this. And Todd, thank you so much for sharing this, because every day of the week I get a call from somebody. Tell me what the best place is for my mom. Don't you have like a Consumer Reports, this, that, and the other? And what I tell them, folks, just so you know, if you are able to put together a system and apply the practice that Todd is shared with us, the best place for any of us is the one that we can visit on a regular basis without being that inconvenient to our lives. So even if on the Medicare star system it says 3-star rating, if that nursing home is next door to you, you get over there, you become part of that community, you bake cookies for the caregivers, you buy them tickets, you show up. And the other thing, Todd, that I want to commend you on is going out beyond your mom. The number one topic on our platform is solo aging. You probably saw this firsthand. Many of those people there in that community with your mom don't get any visitors because they don't have any connection. And you playing a role makes a huge difference.
Yeah, so as COVID started to subside and we were finally starting to be able to get back in, one of the things that New York State did is you had to get tested every other day, and testing supplies were limited. So I checked with the folks, the nurse on the floor, and said, how many family members are coming in like me every day? I'll reach out to our local government and see if I can't get as many test kits as possible so that we can all continue to do that. So and I'm not going to give the number out. It was shockingly small. Um, so really just surprised me that, and that made me feel worse, right? For all those other folks that I might have interacted with while they were sitting next to my mom, that might have been the only outside interaction they had with somebody for who knows how long.
Oh
Uh,
no,
and
it's
the caregivers do as much as they can. They are real heroes working on those floors. But there's only so much they can do in a given day. Yeah, anyways, whatever I could do to help them, I tried to do.
Okay, so now we are at the point of where mom's living in the Wesley and COVID strikes, and now I guess we're at the book. I'm not ready for this. That you wrote, and I like on the Amazon link it says that your consecutive days visiting your mom suddenly came to an end. uh, let's share with us what happened after that.
Yeah, so that was March 12th of 2020. But let me let me go back 75
Okay.
days before then. So we brought my mom to the Wesley on December 26th. So fun day. We had a great time with her on Christmas and the next day. Um, so you know, folks that are on that journey have moments of clarity, right? Where all of a sudden they understand exactly what's going on. And after about an hour on the floor, my mom had that moment of clarity. And so the title of the book, I'm Not Ready for This, she looked at me and said, Todd, I'm not ready for this.
Hmm.
And 75 days later, COVID hits. I get a call from the CEO saying, tomorrow morning, you got to come and visit because I'm not sure when you'll be able to again. I wasn't ready for that. So that's where the title came from. So, but because of New York's protocols, and I get it, at first nobody knew what the heck was going on, and some enormous mistakes were made in New York State and other places. But it went on for 363 days. There was no caregivers bill of rights at the time in New York State. There was nothing we could do. And one of the things that I talk about at the end of the book is, I think the biggest mistake we made, particularly at the political level, is we focused entirely on physical health, and we completely forgot that mental health is just as important. You can't be physically healthy unless you are mentally healthy as well. And oh my God, so I've heard stories, right? I'm at a chamber. I hear from differently abled adults that got sent home from group homes,
Mm-hmm.
children that weren't able to go to school the following year, all these different folks that were just afraid of the virus and catching it, that self-isolated themselves. That's why we're dealing with higher levels of alcohol abuse, drug use, suicide, opioids, you name it. We ignored mental health for a year or two. And what a mistake. We should never, ever allow that to happen again. There has to be some kind of balance, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's a risk that we're taking, in, catching a virus, but that needs to be balanced with, okay, are we all going to be in these isolated pods for the rest of our life and be disease free, but not have the connections that we know are very important to living a great life?
And it was a little frustrating. So I published the book. Of course, it gets out, and some of the social media is tough. Holy cow, social media can be tough. And so you get people saying, "Well, why didn't you just take her home?" And they didn't understand what went into the decision to put her there in the first place. That we just were not capable of doing that safely. And so we had to figure out other ways. We did window visits, virtual visits, but you'll read in the book, those just were not, you can't, when you can't physically give somebody a hug, when they can't uh, smell you, hear you, feel you there, the senses are not stimulated in the way that they need to, especially with somebody that's got issues around dementia. We needed every way of communicating with her and staying in touch with her, and 90% of them were taken away.
Mm-hmm. And what makes it even more challenging is that she's right next door. It's those of us who have loved ones that are across the country, and we give them a hug 2 or 3 times a year. It's, we cobble together something there, but to be next door and to have this literally a wall that is separating you, it's like somebody being in prison, and the oh man, okay. So what I was going to say about, I wanted to jump on your comment about people saying, well, why didn't you bring her home? Folks, during that time, I can't tell you how many people I talked to, and this is validating the senior living environments to take care of our loved ones, because I can't tell you how many people did take mom home and they were calling me saying, this is why we did this. What it validated in their minds, as tough as it was to have their mom in senior living, it validated that it was the right decision, because bringing mom back was safety and a risk and challenging for the families.
The other thing that I've tried to stress to caregivers that I've talked to here about that decision, it turns out it was the best decision, not just for her, but for us, because immediately we weren't caregivers anymore. So when I visited every day, going back to what I said earlier, my job was to make her feel loved, make her smile, laugh, right? So I got to be a clown. I got to bring her a chocolate chip cookie. I got to bring her a little gift, a cup of coffee, hang out with her for a few minutes, give her a hug, reintroduce myself every day. So, right. And so I got to be fun Todd, not caregiver Todd. And that my job became make sure she has a good, at least an hour of her day every day is fun. Now, not all the visits were fun, but I tried my best.
Yeah.
And to add to that, I think that was when, because I struggled having my mom live with me for 18 years and then saying, okay, I can't do this anymore. I struggled with that for a long time, and COVID hitting, I definitely sat there thinking I'm going to drive up and kidnap her and bring her back to Virginia. But there is a difference once you let go in that way of the caregiving role and you can become their child again. I had more fun in that first period of time, and then after, when we finally came out of COVID and we were able to visit her, I had more fun with her than I did that last year that she lived here, because it's exhausting, and unless you go through it, it's like having an infant that doesn't grow up. And so, and there's no reasoning, because it's literally like that. And I I was able to go and enjoy my mom again. And so to anyone who says, I could never do this to my parent, you're not doing this to your parent. You are giving them the gift of people who know how to handle all of their fears, all of the different things that are going on in their brain, that are living in their world. And on top of that, you then get to go and be their loved one again, who comes in and doesn't say, I need you to do this, and we need you to take this, and we need you to go here, and I need you to put these clothes on because we've got this happening. Like, that all went away. And it was a gift to have that time with my mom where she was just my mom again.
What a healthy perspective for all of us to remember is, and just to reiterate what Tracy just said so that I fully understand it, is that oftentimes when we're making this very difficult decision of helping mom move to a community where she could be safe and engaged and active, it feels like, how can you do that? But the key is that when you do that, is to do what Tracy and Todd did, is now shift your mindset to not being that caregiver, to being that person that puts a smile on their face, or to being their daughter again. I also want to piggyback on something that Todd said about reintroducing yourself to your mom every day. We recently had a presentation which I dropped into chat with Katia de Luisa about exploring awareness in the later stages of dementia. And what Katia shared that I thought was great, she said, get over the societal standards of remembering somebody's name. She said, look, your loved ones, they know, they recognize you. They know that you are somebody that is in their life. It doesn't matter that they don't know your name and know that you're their son. She goes, you need to trust that you are a familiar face, and more than likely they are feeling that this is somebody that loves me. Gosh, I'm getting teared up thinking about that. But just, I hope that these are helpful thoughts. Your story is really great.
It's literally what I did every day. I would walk as soon as I get in, as soon as she saw me, I'd walk over, I'd give her a hug and say, "Hi, Mom, it's Todd." And I just took that right off the table, right? And the physical connection, hearing my voice, all the senses were so you could tell, you could see in her eyes that she knew. And I'll throw in, because I know we're going to come up on a time crunch at some point as well. Even in the later stages when her being able to talk using correct words, my daughter described it once as Mad Libs, that Grammy Amy still smiles like her, talks like her eyes light up like her, all her mannerisms are the same, but it's the words are all jumbled, right? So we had to play along. I would try to find one word I recognized and carry on the conversation. I made sure that she knew I was listening, right? So I think that's important, that what she was saying, even though I had no idea what it was valued, and I cared about what she was saying. And I would also joke with her a little bit, right? Tracy mentioned that. So she'd say a word and I'd look at her and go, how do you spell that? Just to, again, try to have some fun. I had to have some fun with this enormously traumatic experience, right? That was my way of doing it, trying to figure, all right, how would you spell whatever word it was she just said? So anyways, I wanted to make sure people heard that too, because that human connection, the eyes, the feeling, the touch, the smell, you can ignite their senses, not just based on your name.
Well, and I will say, she saw me a lot less because I had to travel to New York at that point. And all my friends back home would say, did she know who you were? That's like one of the most common questions I always got. And I said, I don't know. Did she know my name? I'm not sure, but I knew 100% that she knew she loved me because of the way that she engaged with me. And when I said, I love you, Mom, when I left, she would always say, I love you too. So whether
Oh,
she knew my name was Tracy or she thought I was her other daughter, Trisha, it didn't matter. She knew someone she loved came to visit her. And that was the point.
I
oh,
also I was taught to say at the end, I never said goodbye. I always said, I'll see you later, which
good.
was theoretically gives her a sense that, all right, he's not going away forever. So
That's a great tip. Okay, Todd, you're right. We're getting close to the top of the hour. I added the chat into the chat, the links for Amy's Army. If you're in the Northern Virginia, please consider contributing to this amazing cause. I got Todd's book in there, and then we got the link. Like you don't need to join Amy's Army. You could form your own team anywhere at any memory walk. And one of the or walked into Alzheimer's, but the one of the cool things about the walks into Alzheimer's is they're almost like this very healthy, active support group. Is that when you're at these walks, you recognize that you're not alone, that there's other people out there. And so please join the three of us in Reston if you're in the area. But if not, get involved. And I want to,
Can I say something on
yeah,
that?
yeah.
So I tell people, like, look, if you're going through this right now, like, don't have a pressure of feeling like, oh my gosh, I got to donate something. Like, if you're going through this and you just want to show up and see what the walk is about and carry, like, you see these flowers behind me, you carry a flower based on your connection to the disease. And when you're walking around with your yellow flower and you see all the other yellow flowers, that means you're a caregiver and you say, oh my God, I'm not alone. Like, you don't have to donate. Registration is free. While yes, here we are trying to fundraise, but it's not about that. And if you just come that first time, there are booths and there are people there who they're sponsoring because they're connected to this disease and want to help also. It's a great place to get information. It's a great place to feel like there's other people like you. And then if you're there in Reston, you can stay and dance the YMCA with us because we do that every year because that was my mom's favorite thing to do before the walk. So, and they put it on right as the walk starts. So just hang out for a few minutes and we'll do the walk, the YMCA, and then we walk.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, this is fantastic. This has been a great discussion, and I know there's a bunch of rabbit holes we could dive down. Joe brought up, long-term care insurance and the finances involved in being a caregiver, but I'd love to have you all back on. Maybe we'll make this an annual discussion before the walk every year. Thank you so much for having the courage to share your story. But Sherry says here, she says, thank you so much for sharing your experience. You've given me hope. Sherry, one of the things that to use with Tracy and Todd is don't be afraid to tell anybody and everybody what you're going through. I think a lot of times I find that like our discussions are a great easy way to just be involved in a community and not have that kind of like risk of telling your best friend what you're going through, your next door neighbor. But you will be surprised that the more people you tell what you're going through as a caregiver, the more people are out there that need to help each other. And piggybacking on Joe's comment about long-term care insurance, some of us don't have the finances. Some of our loved ones don't have the finances. And the only way we're going to get through this is to come together as a village and provide care to each other. Whether it be bringing your mom into your house like Tracy did, or just helping a neighbor out one day a week, things that you don't have to write checks for, So anyways, I know I'm babbling here. Y'all, Todd, Tracy, and all of you that tuned in today, thank you. Thank you so much.
Steve, if I could just add one quick thing, and that's that
Yeah.
all the proceeds from the book sales is being donated last year, this year, forever to the Walk to End Alzheimer's. It's one of the ways that we're trying to make sure we continue to raise more money. So every single penny that you spend buying the book is donated to the Alzheimer's Association.
Yeah, and thank you, Todd. And Sherry, I see your comment there, and she says, "I feel like a failure so often," and I think this makes me avoid talking about the situation, but the past hour has helped so much. Sherry, I don't think you realize how much hearing that comment from you impacts me, but I just hope that by listening to this and listening to this story, that it just helps you understand that you're not alone. And I think you're going to be blown away. And the other thing is, you heard Tracy's story. um Tracy, I imagine like you probably were in that space where you felt like a failure
Time.
many times. And Sherry, just do not the fact that you are just thinking and caring about a loved one is just incredible. We all just I, I just keep my fingers crossed that my kids will someday, be thinking about me if I need their help. So I hope that I hope that this helped. That makes me feel really good. And I know it makes Tracy and Todd feel good too, because they're putting their story out there to do just that, to help you. So,
And I think I won't speak for Tracy. I think we're both. If you want to reach out to us too, we've been there, we've done it, and a lot of people in my community reach out to me when they're going through an issue now, and I am more than happy to do whatever I can to help people get through this.
excellent. I will make sure to put contact info, websites, and all that. And all right, well, and Todd, I'll get to see you firsthand for the first time. I'll get to meet you in person in a couple of weeks at the Reston Walk to End Alzheimer's. All right, folks, this has been a great discussion. Go out there and enjoy the day and your time with your loved ones, and we will